Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's event. Is person-centered leadership an oxymoron? Our interview with Max Hope. It's great to have you here with us tonight, Max.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited myself. It's good.
Oh, well, it's lovely to have you on and talking about such an interesting question. Fantastic. But before we get there, let me ask you whereabouts in the world you're located.
Okay. I'm in Hull, which is in East Yorkshire, just on the northeast of England. Hull is a port, a declining fishing industry. It's best known for William Wilberforce, the slavery abolitionist, the Humber Bridge, what used to be the longest single-span bridge, the House Martins, for those of you who like your pop music. I've lived here for over 15 years, and I really like living in Hull. So that's all I'll say for now.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that geography. And the House Martins, that's rolling back a couple of years. Thank you. And for some reason, I've just wanted to get started without saying hello to everybody who's joining us online. So I'll do that now and offer a warm welcome to, I know there's quite a lot of people watching already. The chat room's already started, so it's great to see everybody in there. And please feel free to pop questions, comments to Max. I know we're hoping it's going to be quite interactive tonight.
Yeah.
And if anyone's having any problems, Saz will pop her email in the chat room and she'll help you get in and be part of the experience. Great. Okay, well, sorry to interrupt the flow there, Max. The next question I was going to ask you is really about yourself. And can you give us a sense of what your professional journey has been up till now, please?
Sure. Yeah. Well, my professional background has largely been in the voluntary and community sector. So I've spent quite a bit of time working in the HIV field, but then mainly actually working as a youth worker. And I worked in a young people's project in Hull actually for about 10 years. And my role was about training and education. But what was most interesting in the context of this discussion is that within our organisation, there was a person-centred counselling team. And so that's the first time that I kind of bumped into the person-centred approach. So although I wasn't a counsellor and didn't work in that particular team, I kind of picked up on a few things about the person-centred approach, certainly enough to think that this is interesting and maybe it's something that might be of interest to me working in education, training and education. And then more latterly, thinking about that in terms of leadership and management as well. So I started off doing, your traditional management courses through Open University and what have you. And then I just thought there's something missing here for me, which is about how to work with people and how to work more collectively. So through, one way and another, I ended up at Temenos in Sheffield doing a 4-year diploma about the application of the person-centered approach in organizations, which was fantastic and helped me so much in the job that I had, because by that point I was actually leading and managing a small team which was doing education work with socially excluded young people across the city. And I worked really hard to try and create, as far as I could, a person-centered environment within our team and to work as a person-centered leader and manager. I'll say at this point, I'm not that I didn't necessarily get that right all the time. I'm not claiming to be the font of all knowledge about person-centered leadership, but I certainly have a lot of questions and I've done a lot of thinking and I've got certain amounts of theory that I can kind of bring to discussions about that. So moving on, I then left the field of youth work and kind of stumbled into doing a PhD, which was about democratic education, which is not inconsistent with person-centered education. So I completed that PhD and I'm now working as an academic really at the University of Hull, which is in the field of education, where what I'm kind of developing specialisms in is stuff about democratic education, democratic leadership, which is not dissimilar in my view to what person-centered leadership might look like. And I guess I'm bringing together lots of that experience in my professional journey about how to work with people on the front line, how to work with teams, how to manage and lead organisations, and how organisations might be structured as well in more facilitative ways. So that's kind of where I'm at now, where I'm also still at Temenos trying to get some stuff going where we look at the wider applications of the person-centred approach. The stuff I'm most interested in is education, leadership and organisations, but there are other people at Temenos wanting to do other stuff, which is an exciting time, I think. So maybe that's enough for now.
Well, I mean, what an interesting journey that you've had, Max, to be around the person-centred community, but not as a therapist, I guess, with a very different role and similar interests, but yeah, leadership, management, education, very interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and the thing of not being a therapist brings with it advantages and disadvantages, because not being a therapist means that there's certain things within the person-centered community that I don't feel part of, because there's some training and events and opportunities which really are specifically aimed at therapists. But obviously there's a lot of very common ground as far as philosophy and approaches where I do feel that we've got a lot in common, and I've certainly learned a lot from working with therapists, working with other people interested in the person-centered approach. Yeah.
Yeah, so a huge amount of crossover, and of course, you know, it can be called the approach or the philosophy, the person-centered philosophy, which is much wider than a therapeutic context.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So maybe we'll come back to that because that's such an interesting thread. But I want to make sure that we catch the question really that you've posed for our event tonight, which is so fascinating. Is person-centered leadership an oxymoron? What a
Yeah.
great question. Could you give us a sense of your thinking behind that, Max?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you where the question came from because it's not my question. When I was doing my diploma at Temenos, you have to write a dissertation, and I was writing my dissertation about the person-centered approach in organisations and how we can apply person-centered theory in that context. And I was talking to a colleague, they didn't work for my organisation, but a colleague in another organisation, and they said, what are you writing about? And I said, well, at the moment, I'm writing about person-centered leadership. And she just said, person-centered leadership, surely that's an oxymoron. And I said, well, of course it's not. And then I walked off and thought, actually, that is a really interesting question. And I understand completely why she asked that question. But it wasn't where I was at in my journey, because I'd spent 4 years studying so much stuff about the person-centered approach. And in my mind, it's very consistent with working in organisations and a variety of different roles in organisations, including managing and leading organisations. But it made me think about what is an oxymoron as far as being an apparent contradiction in terms. And okay, so person-centered and leadership, I can see why people would think that is contradictory. That as soon as you start talking about leadership, that therefore that couldn't possibly be person-centered. I do get where the question comes from. And yet I really want to strongly challenge it as well. I don't think it is an oxymoron. I think it can be consistent, and I guess that's what we're talking about.